Havenhurst. My gig, I've been a journalist in Nashville for 20 plus years now, covering music, and it's been a privilege and an honor to follow Americana music since the very first convention here. Anyway, I wasn't part of the gatherings that cooked up the format and the idea, but I was at the banquet and the awards when they gave Johnny Cash the first Free Speech Award, and watched Roseanne Cash receive it last night. 15 years to the day after Johnny Cash died was quite stunning and something else. So this event every year is full of stimulation at every level. And those of us who love to talk about issues gather for these panels, and thanks for being here for this one. Representing Appalachia and Americana, wonderful panel. Everybody I dreamed of having was able to come. I'm just so fulfilled, so I'm going to introduce them in a second. A recording artist. She's had hits in country, and she has made deep and lasting folk music of many strains, and just appreciate her career so much. Kathy Matei is here, so we'll give her a round. But somebody who's, I think, is just a true dynamo out there in East Tennessee, making it happen as a musician, as a radio host on Radio Bristol, leader of Bill and the Bells, terrific band, indescribable band, I would say. Very hard to put your finger on Bill and the Bells, but new recording out, and his name is Chris Trulson, so hi to him. Our academic, our postdoc guy on the panel from East Tennessee State, Appalachian Studies, and the Old Time and Country Music program, and here chiefly stimulated by the fact that he, I'm going to put this slide right there, that he produced and wrote the liner notes for this incredible anthology, Big Band Killing, a modern take on Appalachian balladry, which I'll definitely ask him to describe. Turns out that his liner notes and my liner notes are both up for the IBMA liner notes of the year in a month, in a few weeks in Raleigh. If he wins, I will not Big Band kill him. But I want this, man, I want this. Anyway, down there at the end, thanks for being, I met Amethyst 10 years ago. I just reminded her, doing a film for the ETSU Old Time Country Music program, and meeting the students. And Amethyst and I had a fascinating conversation that I still have in my hard drives, and one day I'll dig it up and I'll send it to you. But a recording artist, a true blue folk singer, and a very innovative person who gives us this record cover, so you know this is not your grandfather's Appalachian music, but Amethyst Kia, ladies and gentlemen. I chose to do that in the back corner there. You were meant to see all those logos. That's
just a little bit about how I came to all of this. I grew up in West Virginia. I was completely eaten up by music at an early age, but there was no one in my family that played music. My grandmother and my great-grandmother were wonderful. You know, my great-grandmother was an itinerant preacher and Appalachian singer, and would go around with her husband up in the mountains doing tent revivals in the summer, and had evidently an amazing voice, but she was pretty old by the time I came along, and I never got to hear it. And so, in the meantime, both my grandfathers were coal miners. My parents grew up in really coal towns. My grandfather on my dad's side was an Italian immigrant. There's a whole culture of Italian-speaking people in the coal mines that hasn't really been talked about very much. And he actually talked to me some about the African-American people that they worked alongside, and how the Italian immigrants related more to their black co-workers than they did to the others, because they went through a lot of the same stuff. There are all these little nooks and crannies of very interesting stories of how the culture sort of adapted. I remember having a conversation with Bill Withers one time, and he said, I wrote Lean on Me because we were up in the holler, and we didn't see color in the holler. If you needed something, you went to your neighbor. If you needed a place to go be because your roof was caving in, that's where you went. Nobody really cared. And so I think there's a really rich cultural tradition that's about community and about a very, very deep sense of place and an attachment to the land. One of the things, when I made this record, Calling Me Home, as I got deeper, I kind of had a Swiss cheese kind of upbringing about all of this. I heard Appalachian music when I was young, but there was nobody in my world to teach it to me. So I would learn any music from anybody who would teach me. And so I didn't really get deeply steeped in this music. And so I went back and sort of picked it up later on. And when a couple of things happened for me when I did that. One was that many of the fragmented family stories that I'd heard over the years sort of began to glue together into a bigger narrative. And I began to see a lot more about my family and how these songs were directly related to their experience and mine. And when I grew up, I thought, well, my story isn't about Cole. That's my parents' story, that's my grandparents' story, but it's not my story. And it was about halfway through making that album, and I was like, oh, my manager, Mark, looked at me. We'd gone back home to take pictures, and he said, Kathy, you grew up in the shadow of coal. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And the biggest coal-fired electrical plant east of the Mississippi was like 5 miles from my house. And, you know, I never thought about, like, you burn coal, and that was, you know, it was just good jobs when they came in. So there's just a whole lot about, I think for me it was like the fish saying, where's the water? Like I couldn't really see the cultural implications, and the music was what led me back to a deeper understanding of my own story, and of this music and how it is still, you know, one of the things that I discovered, and I'll end with this and let you sort of get on with things, but some of these songs that I found were from the songwriting generation before me, Billy F. Wheeler and Gene Ritchie and Hazel Dickens, and you know, I discovered that if you sing a song that's 50 years old and you sing it honestly, and there are people living in a situation that has not changed, that's being narrated by this song that was written 50 years ago, you don't have to pound a podium. The song will do the work, and will do it in a deeper way than any words you say ever will. So that's kind of my 2 cents. It's a tradition in this kind of music of like the old people passing the stories and the music and the playing down to the young people. So Seed Time on the Cumberland as a whole, the people at Appalachia in Whitesburg, Kentucky, started this to pass the tradition on and to make the young people have access to the traditions of the place that they're from. And so when people start to learn this young, not only is there not so much an age barrier, it's like you sit with somebody who's 80 or 90 and you have reverence for them. And there's a connection that's not about hipness or youngness. It's about steeping in something. And then if somebody goes on to make modern music from that, they have those deep roots and it comes through without even trying. And I think that's one of the things that old time bluegrass can contribute to the bigger conversation that I think is really, really important.